Good morning and welcome back to the Opportunistic Trader for February 6th, a expiration Wednesday. Got to check the straddle in a little bit, see what's going on there, but I could kind of tell we're probably pricing in somewhere around 12-ish dollars on that straddle, but we'll come back to that in a bit. Just want to go over the overseas markets.
One thing before we even get there, the puts, the 2730 puts, 450 bid. We've come a long way. That would have been 25 bid a month ago.
Oh my God. The
30 puts are 450 bid.
So you could literally hedge your entire downside risk for that number, and the most you can lose on the day is $6.
A month ago, or 6 weeks ago, that would have been 25 bid.
So we're in zero volatility land. Volatility on the pure basis is 1530, the lowest that we've seen in a really, really long time. It looks cheap, but again, I guess really the takeaway is the State of the Union was a big non-event. Actually, I think Trump was sedated. Like, the big takeaway is that he had what they say, low energy. So he had a low energy, and I actually fell asleep before it ended. He was an hour. Do you know the time on that speech? Because he was an hour and 20 in, and I
turned it off at like an hour and 10 after.
I mean, it was unbelievable, and he was going, and then it's hilarious to look at, like, Pelosi behind him. She was like applauding him, then she was sitting down, then she was actually, I don't know if you saw, she pulled out to give an envelope or something, and she pulled out a sheet of paper. It looked like bigger than her entire body, and she was like reading it in the middle of the speech. And Trump was in rare form. He was just reading off a teleprompter. I mean, I guess it's very hard, obviously, to go on for an hour. That would, we do it here at the Op Trader, and we have a lot of content to talk about. But in general, he was like an hour and 30 into that, and he has to talk about all the people that he brings up, like there was a girl who had brain cancer, but he didn't really know much about it, so he's just reading what it's saying. So it was a low energy speech. No surprises. The surprise is going to come in. When is the government shutdown again? In 2 weeks?
I think next Friday.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting if we go back into it. I think they actually have to do something to stop that. I'm assuming they will. But again, we will see. And, looking at markets around the world, Asia is going to be quiet. It's their, New Year, Lunar New Year. I don't know what year, if it's the year of the dog or the bull. It's probably the year of the bull. So they're celebrating another year of the bull. And there's no trade there for the week. And Japan was up very, very slightly. Our market traded soft overnight. DAX is down a little, but DAX was really we didn't talk about it much yesterday, but the DAX was really a big move. It moved like 270 points or 2.25%. And that pushed our S&P. And again, it was interesting. We put on our site, there was about $2 billion to buy that literally stayed until the close. So I guess that's new money being allocated to the marketplace, but I'm not 100% sure. And again, this is like the little engine that could market. Apple still chugging along at 175. Warren Buffett will come out with his filings, and I'm sure he bought more because he'll keep buying that until he's not alive. And pretty much every quarter they're going to increase the filing. It would be shocking to me if he didn't, but we're back to 175. And a buddy of mine who is actually a member of our site bought the stock at 178 on the way down. He price averaged. He bought some above 200, and then he bought like at 150 and change, and he got bailed out. So he's almost even on his trade, and The up move has been big. The S&P is almost up 10% for the year and 15% from the low and 5.5% from an all-time high. So that's where we sit. We're happy here that we have not really been short the market in any way during this entire up move. So that's been a good sidestep. And overall, there's not a lot going on. Oil is off the higher end of the range, but on the high, on the highs, still significantly lower than the $70 that it was before it free fall. But if we look at oil was $72 or so, and it went to $41. It almost went in half, and now we've retraced probably 30% of that up move. Nat gas is back to $2.60, and we brought it up yesterday, but the guy from that shortsellers.com or whatever it was,
I'm bringing up the chart.
He got taken to the cleaners. Somebody knew that guy's positions, and they ran him out of town. And literally his position was short options because that was the name of his fund, and he was short. Where this guy got crushed was he was short calls and puts in both nat gas and oil. And if you remember, during that move, nat gas was going crazy to the upside and oil was crashing. So he had to worry about his calls in nat gas on the upside, and he had to worry about his puts. And when a move happens like that, especially on the downside in oil, volatility gets extreme, and overall it blows you out. And then on top of it, when you know that there's a position that somebody has and they have to cover both sides. So a lot of times what happens is on one of these squeezes, the puts and calls both go up. Now they don't go up per se. So in oil, if you were short the 60 calls, they wouldn't have been higher, but on a vol basis, they'd be higher. So you'd have to buy those at a much higher volatility, and you'd have to, obviously the puts went crazy, so you'd have to cover them on a much higher volatility. So those trades blew up on him. It's funny to see the market back at 260, and I really think, do we have the chart up on it?
Nat gas, yeah.
Like, this is lower or on the lows of where the entire move started from. I mean, the contracts are gone. The contracts that are really affected were Jan and Feb. I think this is a March contract. So those were gone, so it's really going to be hard to tell where it came from. But if we remember when Fish was on, Mark Fisher, it was about 290 and change, and he thought it would go above 3 and then take off. So in general, he was right on that call, but the move really isn't reflected in this contract. And what was interesting about the move and led you to understand that it was a squeeze was the fact that the back contracts never moved. So when this thing went to 5, the back contracts were under 3. So it was a squeeze on positions, but it's a lesson learned, and it's interesting to note that. And a lot of times this happens in these obscure commodities. I've seen it happen in cattle. Phil Flynn was on earlier in the year talking, I forgot what commodity he was talking. I don't know if it wasn't palladium, but it was like a esoteric product of a metal that was going crazy. And then there was, I don't know if it was hogs or one of those, but those are markets that you can have extreme 100% moves in a week or two. That's why, for me, it's better to trade a broad-based indice where everybody is in it. And yes, you can have a squeeze and a big move. And this is one case where it is. The S&P has come from 2316 to 2735, which is an amazing move of almost 18%.
You know what you just referenced before, you started to talk about how the issue was with nat gas. One of them was how volatility exploded and the option prices continued to explode, both the puts and the call. It reminded me of a story you've told me many a times. I don't know if you've mentioned on the site, is when you were trading in 1987 and when the market went down, how calls, what happened to the calls? You want to talk about that stuff?
Oh yeah, that was. It'll bring me back to when I was pretty young, and before I get to the story, I actually played ball last night, and I'm not going to reveal my age, but it's not young.
Dunk?
But I could get net maybe. Actually, I don't think I can get net. I think I could get the bottom of the net if I stood on someone's shoulders. So my jumping ability has gone away, and I never really had any. But so I was playing on a team yesterday in half court, and there was a very good kid, and I looked at him and I couldn't gauge his age, and he goes, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm 27," and I was like, "Listen, I got like 30 years on you. So I'm going to go back 30 years when I was 27 and actually younger. In 1987, talking about option pricing, the options went to like 1,000 volatility. I don't even know what the actual vol was because it was really hard. There wasn't computers like that, and people would print out option values on a Schwarzatron, they used to call it, and it would come out, people would be walking around with a mini Bible like looking for option pricing. But the ironic thing on that move, which I've stated, and I truly believe this is true, and you should never say never, but it should never happen again. And that being that options on a down move, call prices would go actually up in price. So if the index today was at 2732, okay, and let's say we had a crash and we went to, I don't know, 2100, okay. If you were short the 2750 calls, now, vol will go up, the prices will stay high, but I can't imagine those options will go up. But back then, we sold options at $3 or $4 that went to 50. There was no price that you could buy it back. There was a completely inefficient market, and puts and calls went up, and there was no price that you could buy it back. So that in itself was pretty... pretty unbelievable. And I don't think we'll see it again, but that's what happened. If you sold a straddle, put and call, obviously you went out of business, but the puts went to like 500 and the calls went to like 50. So the bottom line is it got to the point where it was unbelievable in general, but I don't think we'll ever see that again. That was a time for the ages. But again, in some of these esoteric products, you could see it. That being said, never say never. So anyway, that's that story. Looking at markets and for trades in general, gold coming back down to 1,300, not really a trade there that I see. Currencies, same type of thing. The pound against the dollar is 129.60 in the range. The Canadian US 131 and some change, back to almost 132. But overall, there's not a lot going on. Same trend. Apple, Apple ticking higher slowly. Facebook kind of running out of steam. I think the market is running out of steam here. So that being said, we're really looking to put a short on at some point. Interesting, Twitter is up. I guess Twitter's up. I saw one of Mike's favorite stocks, Snapchat, was up 20%. It's almost $9 again.
I'm on Snapchat all the time.
So the user engagement was good, and all was good with that. And that market's back, and Amazon's ripping higher after getting down to 1,600. It's now almost 1,700. Overall, across the landscape, markets are quiet, volatility is sustained, and there's not really a good opportunity here. To the short side would be the play, but it's just a grindy higher market. And the clues that we usually look at are not playing out. So we look at bonds, and bonds are basically up. What's the yield on the 10-year? Is it
don't have it. About
265?
No, we jumped up on Monday. Had a nice rally. I don't have it in front of me, but yeah, it should be about 269 or 270.
Yeah. There, I'm gonna
268.5.
Yeah. So 268.5. But this is the low end of the range, and overall markets are flat. Nasdaq's the outperformer. Nasdaq, I think, is up 10% for the year. I got to check it out.
What are you trying to say?
Nasdaq. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this week alone, it's really outperforming.
I think it's up 12, maybe. Qs. I'll go to Qs, see where they are. Qs coming into today are up 11% for the year. So 11 and a quarter. A good year, a very good year.
Year in 5 weeks.
So everybody is.
It does remind me, though, January of last year was a good month for everybody as well, and then February really got volatile, and then it was a difficult year. So it's it's been volatile the past few months. We've calmed down, but it's last year we were off to a good start also, and then things really got going. We have a lot coming up with China. Secretary Mnuchin was just on, and he said they're trying for that March 1st deadline, but they aren't there yet. They're working hard, but he wouldn't talk. There's going to be a lot of stories still to come this year about how that plays out and a number of other things.
And that's my best trade of the year. I don't even think you're going to see the move until after. China's still 23.5% lower after having a 7% rally. So that thing was down 30%. Overall. So the bottom line is that's our trade. It hasn't been the greatest, but we believe once everything gets done here, we could see a big move up in China. Overall, looking at the stocks, we discussed it before, they're kind of flat. Same mantra, technology outperforming. Banks are a little iffy. Goldman couldn't hold above the $200 range, so maybe it comes in, and Citi is 63 and change. So keep an eye on those. When does Twitter report? I think they must report. They didn't report in this cycle, so I'm gonna look it up. But Twitter is going to report. It will be interesting to
tomorrow.
Oh, see that? It was like ESP. I knew they were going to report shortly. People think they're going to beat the quarter. I don't even know. We're on Twitter. It seems like the whole thing is fake with fake robots. And one day I have 5,000 followers, and the next day there's like 50 robots that drop off. And it's funny, if somebody likes what you have, 4 robots go behind it and like it. And I think it's operating in a landscape that I do not know. So I think overall Twitter should be okay, but again, I don't understand the landscape. And before we get to trading and going in the chat room, I just want to discuss my last one of the day is Bitcoin, which is has been one of Mike and my favorites over the last 6 months, to watch that thing just drip lower, and it's pretty much on the March contract lows. But it's interesting. I was looking at the market cap of the 20, I think there's only 2,500 Bitcoins left. You know, not Bitcoins, but altcoins and Bitcoin and whatever else. So there's 2,500 left. And the bottom line is, with that,
market cap of Bitcoin is 60 billion.
Right. I saw it was 59.
That's a 59.7.
Yeah, it went below 60 for the first time. I know. You're giving it the benefit of the doubt. But it's all these other...
It's minus that guy who lost 150 million, the guy who died in Canada.
Oh, yeah, that's a crazy story. I don't know if we talked about it quickly yesterday, but there was a gentleman that had his own Bitcoin exchange, and they actually disclosed the position. He actually had more
other stuff,
Ether or whatever they call it, Ethereum and Ripple and a bunch of other coins. He had Bitcoin, but he had more of that stuff. And his wife can't unlock the password. Can't. So overall, somebody's out $400 million or $300 million. You're not one person, but a whole exchange. How do they get that money back? Is it gone?
That's what they're scrambling for. It would be gone if they can't figure out those passwords. It will be gone. They have cryptologists. They got everything trying to
cryptologist. That's a good career. I'm actually getting out of trading.
They're going for his dog, his daughter's name, birthday.
What are you talking about? That is
favorite sports teams backwards.
That is actually right. That is actually funny. It's like, hey, my son is in college. He's going to be a cryptologist. It's like, like when your kids are younger, they want to be like treasure hunters or whatever, and they want to find pirate treasure. Here, you could be a cryptologist and unlock this and hit lotto. But that's the thing that's funny. How could this actually ever be institutionalized to large corporations and banks? There's no backup. There's no government standing behind anything here. And if you invest in it, you could lose all. Like if I open an account tomorrow at Coinbase, and that's, I guess, one of the bigger, better ones, what happens if they get hacked? Am I dead? Is that it? My money's gone? I don't know if the money comes back. I know I had a friend about a year and a half ago, or maybe more, when Bitcoin was taking off. It was like 600 or 800, and he was long, and he bought some, not a lot, for his kids. And the bottom line is, he got hacked. They called him up one day and said, you had no Bitcoin, you're done. It was taken away. So he didn't have a lot in it, but he had a big appreciation, and he was freaking out. And the bottom line is, with that, the bottom line was, he was like, I saw him at the party. He's like, you know what? I had about 230,000 in this Bitcoin, and it's gone. I only put in like 50. So, I'm pissed, but I never really counted on the money. And the bottom line is, a week and a half later, he came back and they had the money. They had the coins back. So he got his money back and he got out. But who would want to invest in something like that? So we'll keep an eye on Bitcoin. The Bitcoin's trading at about 30. Where is it? 33. The futures are 33.35, but I think the cash is like 33.70. So it'll be interesting to see if it breaks 3,000. If it breaks 3,000, all hell's gonna break loose. But what I wanted to say, but I strayed from it, was I would love to know what the market cap of all these Bitcoins were as a combined total at the highs of the market. Okay, so Bitcoin was over five times this value, right? So if you times it by 5, that gets you to like 18,000. So 5 times 60, it had a 300 billion market cap, just Bitcoin. Ripple was at $4. Was Ripple at 4? I think Ripple got to like 3 or something. It's at 20 cents. So that's a 10 timer. So
29 cents.
You're right, 29.
It's a big 9 cents there.
It's true. It's like 30%. but
you have people freaking out that we're long Ripple on our site.
I know. What do you mean it's 20? I gotta look at this thing. I wasn't gonna look at this for 5 more years. But think about it. If this was 10 times higher, so Ripple probably had 150 or 120 billion market cap. So here's something to think about. Ripple had a bigger market cap on its peak than all of the Bitcoins all of the alt and Bitcoins today combined, and there's 2,500 of them. I think the market cap is going to go below 100 billion. I think it's 106 or 109 billion. That's the whole market. And it's interesting when you look in, you note this, the Winklevoss twins wanted to have an ETF. And if they got that ETF, potentially this thing would have ripped even higher because you would have had a way for the public to buy, whatever the conglomeration of coins are, in a way that it would be considered almost an equity per se. So that in itself would have changed the complexion. But now the chance of that, I don't even think they're in for it anymore, but the chance of them getting an ETF is zero. Literal zero, because the market cap of the entire Bitcoin sector is less than GE, or about the same as GE, and it's less than IBM now. It's one stock. It's literally one stock. It seems so big, and everyone was all over it, but if this thing ever is real, I mean, it could go up a lot because its market cap of everything is not that big. So Bitcoin is half the size of GE. Bitcoin is basically a tenth of the size of Apple, one stock. So, this sector is in for a lot of heat, and we'll see where it ends up. And anyway, we sort of went over everything today. Want to look to lean to the short side, looking at the DAX as a clue. That clue hasn't really worked too well multiple times, but, it's something to look at that it's underperforming. Curious to understand gold a little bit. Don't know why that is trading off. Currencies, again, the dollar is a tad bit stronger. The Aussie looks like it's moved a lot.
Yeah, actually, I got beat up overnight. They had some dovish comments from their central bank. They aren't raising rates.
How low did it get? I see it's 71. Did it get?
Well, remember on Jan 4th, it had that flash crash, and without that flash crash, it was trading down to 60, just below 69 was the low.
69.
Yeah, and rallied back up to 70.
And what was the flash crash? What do we do on that?
I pulled it up before. I don't know what the actual low was on. For instance, this screen that I'm looking at here, it says it traded down to 66.
66. Okay, so. Well, let me ask you, since you've been trading it, and I know you traded it active for years and years and years, what was the lowest it's ever been, since you've been trading it, you think? Did it get...
Well, in 2008,
it's got to be right
up the weekly from 2008. I hope it goes back. I don't have what it got into. I think it... hang on, let me see if I...
Because we got to be around the lows.
Into the 50s. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, 55.
Oh, but that's like a flash crash.
No,
too.
That was 2008. We traded.
Oh, that was the whole year.
Yeah, I mean, this is monthly bars here. We traded from 1 all the way down to 55 in a 4-month period in 2008. With everything with the risk off, because everybody was piling into that. That was yielding over 5% at that time. Japan was yielding 0, so people were basically doing that was the carry trade. They were buying Australia, selling Japan, just taking in that interest of 5 or 6%. Everybody was piling into it, and then it just got, crushed, dropped 50% in 3 months. But back up.
How high did it get? Was it 1 to 1?
It got up to 110.
Really?
Yeah, over 1.1.
Wow. Yeah, so these things move. It just takes a long time. Because from what you said to me, the big major currency trading is very difficult.
Yeah, G10 vol right now is at the lowest levels in 15 years. Euro, we've been between 112 and 115 for months. Especially after that last Fed meeting, the vol continues to drop. There's just no real catalyst to really move us around a whole lot at the moment in these majors. There is a lot of news. European banks aren't doing fantastic. Brexit is coming up. And there's definitely some problems out of Europe, but they're also looking at it saying the Fed is not hiking anymore. So that's typically not good for the dollar. That said, when things are uncertain, people like to buy dollars. So in December, the dollar was strengthening a bit on the idea that it was conflicting because the idea that it's safety. We're still the highest yielding currency right now at about 2.5%, whereas Japan has negative rates. So 2.5% looks okay these days. That said, if we're no longer on a rate hike path, then less expectation for dollar to strengthen. So a lot of banks are looking for dollar weakness this year, but we'll see.
Yeah, it should be. I'd like to see that thing trade. I used to trade. I don't know. It's funny. I didn't realize how much I guess I traded to this thing because they have this currency lawsuit that's been going on, and I had to input. I don't know. Like some trading that I've done, and it said that I traded a big number. You can do, like, when you were trading, what was your notional, Mike?
Well, it depends. Different times. I mean, we're active traders, so we're in and out, in and out, in and out, and so we traded billions, things like that.
Billions? Wow.
Yeah, billions a month. And,
a month?
Yeah, just like active traders are in.
So what is the leverage? It's got to be huge.
Well,
right?
leverage, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they would allow retail accounts to go 200 to 1 or